Welcome to Brightly, You Radiant Being, the show that wildly recognizes, encourages, and invests in the radiance we all carry so you can shine your brightest. Each episode, we share soul-driven advice and topics to help you live more brightly in mind, body, and spirit. Through sharing our experiences, friendship, and passions, we hope to impact you to step more brightly into yourself, inch by inch.
Hi, Amy.
Hello, Tracy.
So last episode 59, Surrender, which for us just happened to be like 7 minutes ago, I had a eureka moment and I want to keep talking about it if that's okay. So if you haven't listened to 59 yet, even if 60 is what caught your eye, we encourage you to go and listen to that one first. It's only 30 minutes, go for it. But right at the end of the episode, it was on surrendering. We talked about how surrendering is about softening into possibilities.
I loved that. I just loved that.
But here I'm at a bit of a crossroads with it though. In our little mini 5-minute bathroom break, I had a lot of thoughts to share with you.
This is how we work, people.
This is how we work. So if I'm softening into possibilities and I'm now excited about possibilities, known and unknown, like how do I prepare for those while also surrendering to those, while also being ready for those? Like, is there like a dichotomy there? Like, or am I making this up?
You are, no, seriously, the fact that you had this just sort of little eureka moment or epiphany, it's hilarious because this next time we're talking about leader and how to be the leader of your own life. And believe me, I know, because I was like, it's kind of odd. Like, so let's talk about the oddness of doing one episode on softening and surrendering, and the very next episode basically on who's your daddy, right? Who's like,
I love how you phrase it that way, because in the surrendering episode at the beginning of it, I really picture like a colonial era or, like Civil War era surrendering, typically white flag.
Yeah.
And in those situations, usually the leader has abandoned the troop. It wasn't the person that had been leading them all along. That's the one to surrender. It's the next few down that have stood up and been like, so in essence, they took leadership, right? Like they decided to lead the surrender and accept what was happening in the moment.
They led the surrender. I love that. So I do I want to talk about the dichotomy of that. And actually, I love duality. I love dichotomy. I love to dig into that. So,
who's your daddy?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, guess what? It's you. That's it. Not you. I mean, it's me. I mean, we are our own. We're the leader of ourselves, however you feel about it.
But I have a great,
yes, you are. And I have a great sort of story, not story. It's an actual thing. It actually happened.
Your story. Personal story.
So basically, so it's about my middle child. He's it's Joey. And he has had a lot of ups and downs in his life. And the last thing that happened to him, well, not the last thing that happened to him, but a couple of years ago, he went to prison. And I feel that it was a turning point for him because he was finally at a point where he said, I need to do this. This needs to happen now in order for me to be able to move forward. I have to be off of the street. And I realized prison is not a great place. It's not where people want to be. So he's in prison. Now he could have fought it the whole way, right? He could have been angry. He could have been belligerent. He could have caused fights. He could have not done the things that maybe was expected of him, but he did surrender into it. He surrendered into it. He surrendered into the treatment that went along with the program in the prison that he was in. The treatment program brought in monks to teach them how to meditate. He surrendered into meditation. He surrendered into becoming sort of a little bit of a leader to other people who were in the program. Then he came out. He knew what he had to do. He surrendered to what he had to do to move forward. Went into the halfway house, got the job, got the next job, got an apartment. And then he was ready to be like, I'm ready for a goal. And then he stepped into the leadership portion of his life and decided his goal was to join the French Foreign Legion. So then he looked at, what do I need to do that? And he ticked off all the things that he felt he needed to do. And he did a lot of research. And now today I talked to him and he will be purchasing an airline ticket by the end of March.
It's happening. Wow.
It's happening. So I feel like that's a perfect way to talk about surrendering and then leading yourself.
Well, and it's such a great example that surrendering is still not giving up.
Right.
That truly giving up would have been, my life is prison and all of my actions are going to keep me here or bring me back here, because that's the path of least resistance. And it's what's happening to me. Everything in the story you just shared was he surrendered to more work. He surrendered to the choice he had to make. And he chose the one that was still uphill in a sense, but it wasn't. It was a struggle in the sense that it took work and learning and effort, but not the struggle in that doors were closing for him. It was quite the opposite, right? That the harder he worked at it and the more he surrendered to the choices in front of him that were for his greatest good, the more opportunities and paths opened in front of him.
He took charge of what he could. He surrendered to what was. He could have hated it and fought it, but he didn't. And then he took charge of what he could.
And by choosing to surrender, everything else in front of him and even like everything happening it seemed like a choice, right? Versus this is what others or the world is doing to me, but it was still a choice, so it's both passive and active. So I love this continuation of the last topic, because sometimes surrendering can mean waiting, but that doesn't mean that once the universe presents you or you're presented with your options that it's just going to be given to you on a platter, right? Some things might be, some people, sometimes we get that, right? But the majority of things are still going to require active participation, including surrender.
Yeah. So I don't know. I felt like that was a perfect sort of segue into this, even though I do sort of also feel like the stories we shared last time in a way were about surrendering and then taking charge of what we could, and becoming leaders of our own life. And so, like, what does that mean to be a leader of your life, to actually lead? And I guess I feel like maybe if we talk about who we consider great leaders of, whether it's countries or organizations or companies, that's maybe a way to distill those qualities down and then think of how we can turn that towards ourselves.
Okay. So at first I hesitate to name names, because so often when we hear the word leader, we kind of think of infallible, right? That they're supposed to be, when you think of the Hunger Games and the Mockingjay, typically a leader is also this focal point, this representation of this unattainable or this desired end state.
Wow.
And so I hesitate to say things because everybody isn't perfect in their life, and that maybe in business or leadership, they're really strong, but in their personal life, they were not a leader. They were not something. And so, personally growing up, I really liked Kennedy, JFK, and RFK, Martin Luther King. The 60s were just full of amazing
Leaders. Yeah.
leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in communities of color, where they most needed it. And so when I
Mm-hmm.
kind of think, back to the leaders then, and then the people that I look to now, it's more about what they inspire me to do in my life and less about who they are.
Oh, I love that.
How about
So, a
you?
great leader to you is someone who inspires you to action
Well,
as
just
well,
inspires
right?
action in general.
Well, and so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you brought that up because I feel like any leader, whether it's like somebody I used to report to or not, I would hope would be someone who could inspire me to action. But I had never put that into words. And I love that. So while you were talking, I was thinking to myself, I was listening to you and thinking to myself, who do I consider a great leader? And I would have to say, like, I would have to maybe think about the past and what you said, like the 60s had such great, I mean, it was people, and like you said, especially in communities of color, and you think of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, you I mean, these were people who did inspire people to action. And so right now I'm like, who inspires me to action? I feel like it's grassroots organizations who
Yes.
inspire me to action.
I was just say locally, if we were to name names, then everybody would be able to resonate, or even, just within our organization, there are people who, what I call a great leader across the board. And like, this is the person that should lead us for 50 years. No, there's a person we both know who's no longer with the company who I adore and think is a fantastic leader in 85% of what she does. But the 15% of what she wasn't a strong leader in or was choosing not to lead in would hinder me from bringing up her name to others in the
Sure.
organization, because that
Mm-hmm.
is what they were known for or became known
Yes.
for, was the lack,
Yes.
right? So that's where the challenge with this leadership piece is because I now, a lot of people that kind of come to mind aren't even leaders in the sense of like people follow them, but they're a thought leader, right? That
Yeah.
great authors, even just people on Twitter, like people asking critical questions and giving good
Mhm.
suggestions and ideas and engaging people in conversations.
Yeah. A leader doesn't have to be someone who owns a company or runs an organization. A leader can be, like you just said, a thought leader.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because especially CEOs, they can so often seem like this great leader, but they have a team of 20 division managers under them and support staff feeding them everything. And they get to take the time and the energy and the pay to have these great strategic insights and
Yeah.
support, right? So I think
Yeah.
it's more about qualities and individuals, because there are plenty of people like my neighbor. I have a neighbor who I would he probably doesn't know this, but I think he's very intelligent and very wise, and he, where he is at in his life right now, is he out volunteering and leading grassroots things or trying to be a leader beyond his own company? No, but he inspires me in certain ways, right? And when I look at some of these traits that you put in our notes, he has most of them. And so it's just,
Yeah.
you can be like a leader of your family, you can be a leader of your own life, like we've been saying. So
Absolutely. So some of these traits that we were talking about, like clear expectations, is a good listener,
vision.
vision, um, brave, fair, maybe dynamic, but also calm, uh, constructive, has good focus, will, fight for you, for you as well. So when we look at that and think about those qualities, then if I were to turn it on myself and say, how do I lead my life? Right? Then I need to say, okay, have I set clear expectations for myself? Have I
Given yourself the resources to
given
achieve those
yourself the
expectations.
resources?
Like that, when I think of work and I think of management and leadership, if they have not gotten you the resources to do your job, ain't nobody thinking they're a good leader, right? Like
That's so such a good point, Tracy. So, like with resources for yourself, like tell me sort of like what you're thinking about.
time, energy, a healthy diet, good sleep hygiene, not overspending in some areas so that you can invest in the areas that will help you with your goals, right?
Yeah.
Good friends and support network. Like treat yourself like you're a company. Ooh, a nonprofit if that makes you feel better. But like, who's your human resources department? Are they getting you? Are they retaining your friends? Are they attracting new talent into your life that supports your goals?
I like this role we're on, Tracy. Who's down with
who's your head of operations? Who's your chief finance officer? And what are the outcomes they're supposed to be achieving for you, right? And I mean all these people are you, just heads up. But
yes,
it makes it
I know
to do if you think about yourself and as wearing different hats.
And it sounds funny, but honestly, it is a way to actually really look at your life as a whole, right? Instead of these bits and pieces, to look at your life as a whole, like a whole organization, and what an organization needs to run and how a leader can lead that organization. And so I think, yes, pull these out, like, how could I be fair to myself? How could I be dynamic?
Yeah. Do I have a vision, a mission, and values? And then are my actions aligned with that?
Yes. And so then once again, I know we hit you over the head with this. You have to be self-aware. You have to take some time to consider, like, what are the things that are important to you. Last episode with surrender, we talked a lot about shoulds and how get the shoulds out, not what should you be like, what should you be doing, unless it's your should, right? As long as it's not, it can't be other people's shoulds though. I love that. And I think there's a way to use this for yourself, like on paper. This is your business plan.
I am the CEO.
Yes. You are the CEO, and it is time to make a strategic plan.
It is time for the state of the union of your life, my friend. We have to talk about where we've been, where we're at, and where we want to go and how we're going to get there. I've worked for a few really large corporations, so feel free. Well, and I talk about this too. Usually around my birthday, I do a personal retreat. It's my own personal New Year, right? So like sometimes for this stuff, the first time I thought about, or actually like sat down to do my mission, vision, values, and like what do I want in life, I left home. I went somewhere for a weekend and I had no money. I house sat for someone, but that change in environment helped. And then I went to library meeting spaces. I went to, free places anytime I had to work on it. Right. So I acted like a little bit of an entrepreneur of my life, but I got out of my usual environment. So I stopped doing my usual thought patterns. I stopped doing my usual
so important
distraction exercise. Right.
Yes. So when you do that, like, is it always sort of the same process, the same kind of ritual, or does it change with each year?
So in my day-to-day life, and this is why, or in my job, what I do for a career, I'm kind of a consultant, an internal consultant. But and probably why I enjoy doing it and was drawn to it. I kind of start with like a gap analysis, right? And so what's my current state and what's my desired end state?
And then you look at what that gap is,
and what's getting in the way. And you can, if we're going to take this business analogy all the way, do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, right? Like,
I think I talked over you. Will you just say it again?
Oh, yes. SWOT. So SWOT. So strengths. And you listed all your strengths in a grid. You list out W's weaknesses, all your weaknesses. And then what are your threats to being able to be you, to do you, what you want to do? And then what are your opportunities? So what's kind of in front of you. And you kind of look at that and you do an analysis of your life. And it's really easy to get analysis paralysis. So I'm hyper aware of myself. My problem, I get an analysis paralysis of opportunity or desired end state, right? Like I overthink or give myself too many end states.
Oh, okay.
Too many goals, right? I take my level 10 life and I put 10 goals under each individual level. And now I look at it, I'm like, oh crap, that's 100 goals for a year. That's too many goals, Tracy. This is too much change. You also have to look at it through that lens of, your CFO and what kind of resources, human talent, which is yourself, your own energy, time, money, all of that can I put towards it. But how about you? What's your process? How are you leading your life? You're being the leader of your life.
I think I'm a really good leader to other people. I have been
wholeheartedly concur.
Oh, thank you. I've been a leader in to teams. I've been sort of a different kind of I have been a direct report, somebody who directly reports to me leader. So I've led, a team of up to 15 people, but then I've also been a leader in the way of let me lead you through this process that we're going through. And so and I do say that I'm not trying to brag. I just know I am good at that because I know when to I just can feel it. And so I know it, but I'm not a good leader to myself.
And I provide you with a mirror for a second.
Yes.
May I give you
yes, please do.
So if you listen to our very first episode, which was kind of a mess, I don't encourage it. I mean, I personally love it because we just talk about ourselves the whole time, but we're really big on personality assessments and doing these types of exercises for the podcast. Who are we? Where do we want to be? What are we now? All that kind of stuff. There is something called the 5 big personality areas. Mm-hmm. I feel like you have you scale towards the proper end of these that lends towards natural leadership with others and your own personality. And so as you hear these, I want you to think about ways in which you can apply them to yourself.
Okay.
So one of the major personality traits of a great leader that they found is openness. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you do when you show up for others, and why you are kind of a natural leader in the room is you're just really open to others' experiences. You have an openness about you. It doesn't seem like you come in with a preordained plan. Even if
I don't have an agenda.
You don't have an agenda. Mm-hmm. Another is conscientious.
If we're having a meeting, I have an agenda, but
right. But your agenda, you're open to other outcomes coming from the stated agenda, right? Conscientiousness, so being able to think about other people.
Okay.
Extroversion, agreeableness, and then the last one's going to sound bad, but neuroticism. And so that's the one where you want to scale on the lower end of it. So somebody with low neuroticism is emotionally stable, deals well with stress, rarely feels sad or depressed, doesn't worry much, and is relaxed. And I would say those encompass how you present to others most of the time. So maybe in some ways in which you don't feel like you have as much control over leading yourself is, I know for myself personally, internally, my outside neuroticism is low, but my internal neuroticism is high. So high neuroticism experiences a lot of stress, worries about many different things, gets upset easily, experiences dramatic shifts in mood, feels anxious, and struggles to bounce back after stressful events. And you don't have to be all of these. It's not all or nothing. And you can be different scales of each of the individual things. But neuroticism is kind of a trait of whether or not you can be resilient, which I do feel like you've demonstrated in your life. Both of us have. We're fairly resilient people. But so, yeah, when you were talking about how you do feel like you can lead others, I've worked with you professionally, and this is immediately what popped into my head, is that you have the 5 core personality traits of a good leader.
Then why can't I lead myself?
Do you want to lay back on that couch back there? Tell me more. Why can't you lead yourself? Do you any roadblocks come to mind you're willing to share?
Procrastination. Too many choices, too many ideas. So then I never actually concentrate on one.
Yeah, and if you don't choose one, you didn't pick the wrong one.
Right. Or else I choose too many and then fail at all of them. And I feel that I lack like an internal motivation. If somebody says to me, like if I was just, we've talked about this before. I mean, we do these episodes because we want to do them, but I feel like we're also motivated by the other person's expectation of us, right? And so if I have no expectation, apparently I think I have expectations of myself, but apparently I'm fine with like, that's okay. So now this is very interesting, Tracy, because
okay, can I hold up the mirror again? I have some
yeah,
ideas.
yeah.
So I'm going to go back to that one thing I say all the time where we judge ourselves on intent and other people on behaviors, right?
Yes.
And so when you're leading yourself, you're judging yourself both on what only you know you intended to do, which was those very many things, and then the behaviors, which you're the only person who knows 100% of what did and did not get done and what should and shouldn't have gotten done, right? And so you're constantly at the seesaw effect, right? Of like, I meant to do this. Whereas a proper leader would have been like, this is too many things, right? Like we need to focus on one thing, or we need to a priority. The definition of priority is one, right? So I'm going to just point out that typically leaders have a staff. So when we're thinking of leading ourselves, I've made a career out of doing what I do best, and then also being an executive administrative assistant to the leader, to the CEO or director or above. Every single one of them gave me all the junk to do. And I knew they were stressed and having a hard time and maybe needed to talk about things when they kept some of the junk to do. When they were like, no, I'll go and meticulously edit this Word document that's 32 pages long. No, Tracy, I'll go in and I'll draft the agenda and figure out the formatting. And I'd be like, what happened today? Why you tell me about your day? What's going on? What's supposed to get done? And like, if you want to do this, you can do this. If you want to do inbox 0 this evening, you absolutely can. But what's going on with you? But like the main thing leaders have, and one of my favorite experiences ever when I was supporting a director is her HR business partner came in and told her, when you are in a one-on-one with your staff, you should never be leaving with a task. Like something to complete for them. Like some tasks aren't really tasks. It's supporting them. It's getting their word out. It's connecting them with people. That's a little bit different. It should never be, oh, I'll write this 5-page document for you, or oh, I'll research this, or oh, I'll reach out to so-and-so, oh, I'll call, blah, blah, blah. No. They're your staff. You delegate to them. They delegate to their staff, right? You are the strategic thinker. In our own lives, we are everything. We're the entire organization.
Right.
And so I think you have to give yourself grace. And I think a big part of leading yourself is acknowledging what you can't do and that there are consequences of that, right? Like you can't do it all. And so what are you missing out on?
Yeah.
That missed opportunity cost. That's really hard to feel like you're choosing.
Missed opportunity cost. Yes. I think that I give myself too many homework assignments, too many expectations. So I don't know if I'm staff or if I'm the leader there, but I give myself too many expectations. And then I'm also like, oh, it would be really nice if this thing happened, instead of just like declaring, this is what I want. I'm getting this. I'm doing this thing.
Because I'm the opposite. You're the worker bee and you've inherited all these tasks that you just seem to know, right? Like there's just like this divine leader that's just like, here's the 32 books we're going to write this week, right? Like that's your person. I'm the opposite, where I'm this huge strategic thinker, all these ideas, and I'm just like, somebody else will do them. Nothing gets done. And then I get the Sunday scaries. Like, where did my week go? It's Thursday. What the hell am I doing with my life? Right. Because I'm so in the clouds with the opportunity and the strategy of it and the process of it that I'm not taking action. And it feels like you're feeling so enamored by all the actions you know you should be taking. You're not looking at that strategy so that you can weed out what really needs to get done.
Maybe, but I'm going to actually say too that part of that, because I have strategic as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes how strategic shows up for me is this would be a really good way to do it. This would be another really good way to do it. This would be another really good way to do it. So maybe that does work into the actions, all these different actions I could take.
Yeah,
and
because
then
part of strategy is also process, right? So you're missing that
Right.
middle manager to come up with the process that the worker bee has to do.
The process.
Yeah. And
Okay.
sometimes I do a really good job at like, and I think I've shared this before too, like for the routine episode and the schedule episode,
Mhm.
I'm really good at once a month going in and really fine tuning that routine that somebody else, Tracy, is going to do someday.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
spend
almost
so much
feel
time in the process. I'm too tired to do it, right?
Well, and sometimes I feel like for me, just like thinking about it and brainstorming about it, then my brain is like, well, that's done, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do that. And for me, it's part of my ADD is that sometimes I don't make to-do lists because the act of writing it down makes me think it's done.
Yes.
And that I feel better if I forgot to do it than if I wrote it down and didn't do it. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and it doesn't make sense. It's this weird cyclical thinking that both of them I forgot to do, right? Regardless of how I got there, I did not do it is the point. And so the part of the process that's missing is how do I go from I have to do this to doing it, right? And that's for everybody to figure out while they're being this. But you're looking at me like this is another episode.
Well, seriously, I am. I feel like we need to come back.
And it actually, not to leave people hanging, but that will be a portion now that I think about it. Our next episode 61, will be on readiness and the concept of if you stay ready, you never have to get ready.
You're right. That will be a great one to come after this one. I just want everyone to remember, and I'm going to remind myself of this as well, that we are our own leader. We are the people who get to navigate our life.
Anchor. Take a pause.
Exactly. So, yeah, we get to know if it's time to charge ahead, if it's time to soften, like we talked about before. I just think that it's important to remember that. And I'm going to remember it as well. I am the leader of my life.
I love this. Yeah. And just this continuation that when you surrender, that is a leadership choice. You can lead your surrender so that you're going to the next best thing. What's next?
Yes, you are absolutely right. Thank you for that. And everyone, if this episode spoke to you or your soul, please share it with a friend. And if you have time, give us some love. A rate, review, and subscribe is always great. You can also reach out to us via Instagram and YouTube under The Brightly Podcast or via email at brightlypodcast@gmail.com.
And with that, we hope you have a bright and beautiful day.